in a casino in Newport, Rhode Island by an organization called the United States Lawn Tennis Association.
In its early years, there was only a tournament for men called the U.S. National Singles Championship for Men.
It wasn't until 1887 that the U.S. Women's National Singles Championship was introduced, located at the Philadelphia Cricket Club.
Only the men's tournament was given the spotlight, and the women were left with little to no audience.
The tournament in 1915 was moved to Forest Hills West Side Tennis Club, which is in Queens, New York.
In 1916, the American Tennis Association was founded by a group of black businessmen, an organization providing tennis opportunities to black people otherwise not provided.
This organization was not involved with the overall tournament of the United States Lawn Tennis Association.
In 1968, the Open era began. Previously, only amateurs were allowed to participate. However, in this era, it became open to professionals as well.
It also allowed for all tournaments, including men's and women's singles and doubles, as well as mixed doubles, to combine into one overall tournament called the U.S. Open. These changes cannot compare to the revolutionary impacts Althea Gibson, Arthur Ashe, and Billie Jean King have contributed to the world of tennis.
Spill the lights.
Althea Gibson was born on August 25, 1927 in Silver, South Carolina, and at age 3, she moved to Harlem, New York. Gibson got involved in tennis and she was discovered by a member of the Cosmopolitan Tennis Club, where upper-class African Americans played. Since the club members saw so much potential, they even paid for her expenses so she could travel to tournaments. This allowed her to be the girls' singles champion for the American Tennis Association at only age 15 and a few years to follow. Gibson had received some help along the way from two African-American physicians, Dr. Eden and Dr. Johnson. They had expressed interest in helping Gibson reach her full tennis potential. The two had persuaded Gibson to go back to high school in South Carolina. Gibson then had to adjust living life in the segregated South. She noted it was degrading to have to sit in the back of the bus or on the balcony at the movie theater. Gibson had first-hand knowledge of the discrimination towards African Americans in America. By the 1950s, the white sports world had begun opening the doors to African American athletes, such as Jackie Robinson in baseball. Dr. Johnson and Dr. Eden had been pressuring the United States Lawn Tennis Association to allow Gibson to play in their tournaments. The public opinion was beginning to shift in favor of allowing African American athletes to play on the traditionally white circuits. Finally, Gibson was invited to play in the United States Lawn Tennis Association National Champions, which is now known as the U.S. Open. Even though Gibson was eliminated in the second round, she had made history for breaking the color barrier in the U.S. Open, and furthermore, tennis. Althea had now begun her climb to the top of the tennis world. As a result of being influenced by the U.S. Open, the following year, Gibson was the first African American to be invited to Wimbledon, a Grand Slam tournament in England. The New York Times wrote on May 31, 1951, she will be the first American Negro to compete on famed British tennis courts. Unfortunately, Gibson was not doing so well in the United States Lawn Tennis Association tournaments. Some think this may be due to the discrimination Gibson dealt with on and off the courts, as the referees favored her competitors. In 1957, Gibson had made a large breakthrough when she won the singles title at Wimbledon, and Queen Elizabeth had presented Gibson with the trophy. When Gibson returned to New York from England, they greeted her with a parade down Broadway, which was so significant because all of New York was celebrating in honor of an African American athlete. She then won the singles title at the U.S. National Championships in 1958, and Vice President Richard Nixon presented her with the trophy. In 1957 and 1958, she was the first African American to be voted Female Athlete of the Year. Having basically broken the color barrier 7 years before, she was essentially taking her accomplishments and tennis to the next level, completely proving wrong all previous opinions on African American athletes. Although faced with many difficulties because of her race, Gibson told the New York Times, "I was enormously proud of my blackness."
The next influential African American player was Arthur Ashe, who further stood up against racism in tennis. Arthur Ashe was born on July 10, 1943 in Richmond, Virginia. Growing up segregated, Ashe started playing tennis at the age of 7, practicing at his local park, which was an African American-only playground that included many tennis courts. While looking to take his career to the next level, Ashe was introduced to Dr. Walter Johnson, who had also coached Althea Gibson. With Johnson's help, he began winning many junior tennis tournaments around the country. UCLA noticed Ashe's skills and offered him a full scholarship to study and play tennis at one of the best college-level tennis programs in the country. Attending UCLA was just the beginning of his journey in life as an influential figure for minorities in the tennis world. Ash was the first African American selected to represent the United States in a Davis Cup play. In 1968, Ash was the first man to ever win the U.S. Open in the Open era. This was so significant because he was an African American man, and the New York Times quoted, "The triumph was the most notable achievement made in the sport by a Negro male athlete." This accomplishment broke down many barriers in the tennis world, proving that this profound tennis society was open to even minorities. Because Ash gained fame and glory for being the first winner of the Open era, this caused more people to respect African Americans as he became a popular figure in the country. In 1969, Ash applied for a visa to play in the South African Open. Since the country had a strict policy of racial segregation, his visa was denied because of the color of his skin. Ash protested and saw this as an opportunity to bring awareness about discrimination, even in the tennis world, that should be abolished. As a result of his efforts to establish equality, the United States and the International Lawn Tennis Federation sided with Ash and expelled South Africa from the International Lawn Tennis Federation and furthermore from the United States Davis Cup. After winning the Wimbledon titles in 1975, Ash was ranked the #1 tennis player in the world. Unfortunately, Ash suffered a heart attack in 1979, which ended his tennis career. Throughout his professional career, Ash had 818 wins and 51 titles. Ash never let the fame get the best of him and understood it was his responsibility to continue advocating for African American rights. Ash's legacy lives on in the Arthur Ashe Stadium, which is the main stadium at the U.S. Open.
Billie Jean King was born on November 22nd in 1943 in Long Beach, California, and had two encouraging parents who supported her decision to become a tennis player. King turned professional in the year 1968 and has since then become one of the all-time greatest tennis players. In 1972, King won the U.S. Open and received $15,000 less than the male winner. This substantial monetary difference frustrated King so much that she urged the sponsors to offer equal prize money to both sexes. At the following U.S. Open tournament, King refused to play unless equal prize money was awarded to both men and women. The sponsors of the U.S. Open honored her request and decided to make the prize money equal. In this one instance, Billie Jean King changed the world for girls everywhere. However, some consider King's match against self-proclaimed male chauvinist Bobby Riggs to be her greatest accomplishment and impact on the world of tennis for women. Riggs challenged King to a match which would later be known as the Battle of the Sexes, though he was 55 and she only 29. In September of 1973, she beat him. CBS Sportsline historian Anthony Holden expressed his views on the match between King and Riggs, saying, "All her life, King has been battling for equal rights for women, not only in tennis and in sports, but in society. And it is a cause she continues to champion in her post-tennis life. But all of her hard work and dedication were dwarfed by what she accomplished in the 2 hours and 4 minutes it took to dismantle Riggs. She disproved Riggs' chauvinistic philosophies." In that same year of 1973, King became the first president of the Women's Tennis Association, and she was even named Female Athlete of the Year. King revolutionized the U.S. Open's outlook on equality for women and women's rights all around the world. Many people today consider her to be one of the most influential women in the world. She has won numerous awards. It is for these reasons that the USTA U.S. Open has fondly named their stadium the Billie Jean King National Tennis Center. Ultimately, King made it acceptable for girls to become more involved in sports. Before King, many girls were encouraged not to play sports that required a lot of physical activity, as they were for boys. Billie Jean King ignored that and paved the way for women everywhere.
The U.S. Open originated as simply a tournament for the upper-class white man.
With the help of Althea Gibson, Arthur Ashe, and Billie Jean King, the U.S. Open has evolved into an extremely culturally diverse competition.
Men and women now receive equal prize money, and they even have a chance to play with and against each other in mixed doubles.
Founding the National Junior Tennis League in 1969, Ashe's organization gave way to two of today's top-ranked players, Venus and Serena Williams. This program provided the Williams sisters with their first ever organized tennis coaching.
The program gives children in need of economic support a chance to explore the world of tennis and furthermore learn from coaches and procedures they otherwise wouldn't be able to afford.
In fact, Venus Williams was the first African-American woman to win Wimbledon after Althea Gibson had won the tournament. In 1977, the tournament moved from Westside Tennis Club in Forest Hills, New York, to Flushing Meadows Corona Park in Queens, New York.
The U.S. Open, being located in New York, adds to the city's thriving culture and furthermore draws people to visit the city.